Okay. Hello and welcome to the CEO host. And I have a treat today. Paige Hayes is going to join me, and we're going to talk a little bit about the role that interior design plays in sort of elevating your presence as a short term rental and using interior design to help you get your unfair share of bookings in short term rentals. So before we hop in with Paige, I guess you and I met through the short-term rental circles. We haven't met in person, um, in part because you travel. You don't have a full-time residence, which I love. I think that is putting your values into action big time with your husband and your boys. And you have a lot of experience in terms of staying in Airbnbs. You do that a lot, as I understand. But most importantly, is I know you as well because you have been a designer for a couple of my clients, and also met you because you have a fairly large Facebook group and community, the and short term rental and Airbnb design Facebook group. That is a mouthful,
Yes, it
and
is.
we will provide a link to that later. And I think you're almost to 10,000 people in that group,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And also, I have to say, I just was so delighted to see you publish the short term rental design masterclass for hosts. So if people have an interest, and I do work with a lot of people who are very interested in doing their own design. But it's different for short-term rentals, and there's lots of things that need to be considered. That if somebody is just buying their first short-term rental and they're getting into it, things to consider. So you actually turned that into a master class so that
Mhm.
people could access that as well if they didn't want to work with a designer. And the follow up to that was you just not too long ago put out a small course as well on photography as well. So anyway, so I welcome to the CEO host. And given that, tell us a little bit about how you got started in the short-term rental design space.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here, by the way. I am Paige, like you said, and I started doing interior design 11 years ago, which is wild to think about now. But yeah, I started actually my background is not in design, it's in anthropology. So I started, yeah, with a degree in anthropology. I've just always really loved the stories of people and kind of the stories of places and the background and just kind of picturing just places throughout history and like really trying to understand like why people do things and why they go places and just the importance of that to people. So I feel like actually that it really they sound so different like design and anthropology, but I feel like it's they're pretty interrelated and that's one of the reasons that I love design so much is getting to tell the stories of places. And it also actually really helps with short-term rental design too is getting that story nailed down. So anyway, sorry. Yes, 11 years ago, design. I'm from Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and my mom's been a designer there pretty much my whole life. So I went to work for her and I learned everything about design from her. We did everything from like 15,000 square foot high-end second homes all the way down to ski condos, which are like they were vacation rentals, which is before really Airbnb ever was a thing. It was just we just did vacation rentals, but I always loved those the best because we got a lot more room for creativity and it just they're a lot of fun. And we had some clients, a number of clients actually, that had us go do them other places as well. So not just in Colorado, but like kind of throughout the country. So we did some in the Hamptons and in Texas and just all over, and I really loved it. So then my mom actually retired last year, and my family and I, my husband and I, we realized that we wanted to do something different. My mom was like, "Do you want to take over the business?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, like I don't." But so what we did is we sold our house and we bought a fifth wheel. We love to travel, and we just realized that we were not spending enough time together as a family. We were working really hard at jobs. Like my husband didn't like his job, he hated it, and we were working really hard at jobs that weren't fulfilling, just to get the things that we thought we needed to be considered successful or to like have a good life. And we realized like that's not it, like those things weren't important to us and we were working for things that weren't important to us. So we talked about what was, and then we sold our house and decided to travel full time. And now we do that. And since then, I've been doing pretty much exclusively virtual design. So I started doing virtual design 2 years ago. And I just had to come up with some really good processes to do things remotely. And I obviously, with my love for short term rentals, have incorporated that into what I do now. So now I do virtual short term rental design. And the processes I've realized, well, it's hard to teach design. The processes that I use actually lend themselves really well to like a consistent and achievable result. It's what led me to creating the courses. I also that's when I decided to create the courses because I love sharing knowledge as well. So
That's fantastic.
yes.
I think one of the things that you mentioned was the story, and I think that may be one of the differences in short-term rental design versus residential design to some extent
Mm,
is what makes a great short-term rental. And so, as I think I mentioned at the beginning, I've been really focusing on helping people identify strategies to help them get more bookings. And I think this is a key point. So I wonder if you can share a few thoughts on how, in your experience, good interior design can support getting more bookings and more revenue. And
absolutely. Interior design, honestly, I mean, I might be biased because I'm a designer, but I truly believe, and there is some data that supports it, that interior design is the number one thing that you can do to increase the success of your property. It's something that everybody really has the power to do, just by making some. If you're just starting out, then you're really lucky because if you haven't furnished yet, then it's really easy to um, make a plan and make like a really targeted plan that includes the story and including amenities and upgrades in your design, to create a really cohesive finished product and an experience for your guests, and like the promise of an experience too that shows through in your listing and makes people really want to come. So you can do that. You can do it anywhere. You can do it with any type of property. It doesn't matter, like your location doesn't matter that much, it does. I know that's an unpopular opinion. It does matter, but like you can, with good design, you can be successful anywhere, and you can very easily, with elevated design, put your property into that top like 95th percentile that you see on AirDNA.
excellent, wonderful. Um, so I want to dig into that idea just a teeny bit more. When it comes to design, how we communicate that is obviously through the photography. And I had just recently did a blog post where I shared, I don't even remember where I learned this fact, but it's like 73% of our enjoyment of a experience is in the anticipation. And that makes so much sense to me because I know when I book a vacation, and I'm looking at the pictures of the rental we've booked, and I'm imagining myself enjoying that space. And so to me, obviously the photography and the home's design and staging sort of all come together to feed that anticipation, which really sets the stage for somebody to have this anticipation. It's like the kids leading up till Christmas, right? You and I both have little boys. Like that
Mhm.
anticipation is like it covers weeks, months, even depending on the kid, right?
Yep.
So I wonder, one, do you help people with sort of that staging and getting ready for photography as part of that? Or is that, how does that kind of play into the design plan?
Yeah, exactly. So it is really important to, I agree with you, to like stage and make your photos really appealing, but in a very realistic way. That's one of the things that I think is most important, is to include in your photo to show your properties like best foot, put your best foot forward when you take your pictures, but also to give a very realistic idea of what people can expect. You don't want to promise them something that you can't follow through on, but what you do want to follow through on, is that elevated experience that you're showing them in the photos. And so, like you said, definitely having the combination of the good design and the good photography and the good like staging and styling is what's gonna just like kind of skyrocket your listing, because you can have good photos of like a kind of a bummer house and it's not gonna be great for you, or you can have like great design but not great photos, and then it's also not going to be great for you. So you kind of just have to like get tick all those boxes, and that's what makes for a really successful listing.
Excellent. So I know I even sent this to you, right? So I recently encountered a situation where an owner, had hired a designer who really did, in my opinion, a really terrible job. So, what are some ways that people who listen to this can, assess and hire the right designer for the job?
That's a great question, and I would like to shout it like from the rooftops. I actually have a sheet on this with some detailed information on questions that you as a host or a client should always ask your designer, and also like what they should be telling you. So if you want to link that or anything, I'm happy to just provide it. But a few things to really make sure and nail down are, first of all, the budget and what that includes. Like the design fee, if they're giving you a design fee, ask them what that includes and make sure it's very clear in the contract. And like whether it's travel, like does it include setup, or is it just remote? And then with the furnishings, if they give you a furnishing budget, what does that include? Does that include furnishing and stocking? Does it include furnishing and stocking and shipping and setup? Like, I think a lot of times there are unrealistic or not correct expectations created because the scope of work isn't laid out very specifically in the beginning. And then I think that the other big one is really just to definitely interview a number of different people and see who you connect the best with. Look at their past work, make sure that they have done short-term rental design specifically, and ask them about that, because there are a lot of designers out there, and there are a lot of virtual designers getting started as well who don't actually have short-term experience. They may say that they are an Airbnb designer, but they don't actually have that past project experience. And like we know that it's different than a regular a regular property, and there are a lot of things to take into consideration. And getting that high design and getting that amazing like show stopping, scroll stopping design is really important to the success of your investments. So getting the right designer is key.
So we talk a lot about, you know, the importance of copying in the photos as they're scrolling, but even really emphasize that, but you have to deliver on that. And I wonder if you have a few practical applications of, you know, what are some of the different things that get incorporated into short-term rental design? In my head, it's things like one of the properties we did, we looked at how to maximize occupancy,
Mhm.
right? So how could we do that? Which is certainly not something you're thinking about in residential design. But I wonder what are some of the considerations that do differentiate short-term rental design from residential design?
Yeah, so like you said, occupancy is huge. So making sure that if you have, if you're going to be sleeping 12 people, that you have room for 12 people to exist in the property, to sit down and eat a meal, whether it's all together or just in a similar area. Also, like functional spaces. When people are staying for a very short amount of time, they don't need the same things that people living in a house do. For instance, like a walk-in closet. So a lot of times we will do like some storage on one side of a walk-in closet and then do the other side as like a remote work area, like a little office. So then you have another amenity box to tick on Airbnb, and then as well as providing a great space for somebody who might be trying to work remotely and needs like a private area. And that's a great way to like utilize space in a way that's functional for short-term guests. And then also just the type of furniture that you pick. Like you need to have different materials, and you don't want to go with like white cotton on your upholstery. Looking for polyester and like PU or faux leather is great. Contract grade when you can find it, performance fabrics, that kind of thing. There are a lot of like little things that you just really need to keep in mind in your design to get it successful.
Awesome. That's so great. So can you share a little bit about what kind of services? I mean, you mentioned remote. I wonder, if somebody's never worked with a designer before, what can you just kind of walk through, like what does that look like? In terms of
Yes.
how that works?
Yeah. So I call it, I have three types that I call it. So it's either done for you, done with you, or DIY design. And done for you is kind of the more traditional, like you hire a designer and they're local or they travel to you and you pay them. They come in and they take care of everything. You just sign the checks. They will do the setup, they facilitate it all. And that usually comes with a pretty high price tag, and if you have the budget for it, it's great. You don't really have to worry about, hopefully if you hire the right designer, you don't have to worry about anything. Um but it does have a high price tag. So then there's done with you design, which is what I do now, and that's virtual design where I do like a consultation and just kind of talk through the vision for the space. We talk through the story because the story is so important, and nailing down part of the story is like nailing down your target guest, figuring out who's going to be coming to stay with you and why, and like what would make your property stand out. So we kind of do that initially. Then I will do like all the furniture layouts and design boards and sourcing, and I provide a linked shopping list of everything to order, including like stocking items and all that for the clients. And then they place the orders and do the install with guidance. I provide a guide. And then the last one is DIY design. And DIY design is like exactly what you would think. You do it yourself. But again, so I like to relate it to like tiling a bathroom. Like if you have no experience tiling a bathroom, it's not very smart of you to go in and just demo and just go for it. Like you're going to try to inform yourself about how to do it first. So that's what I always suggest, is that if people are planning on doing their own design, it's a great way to save some money. It can be if you know what you're doing and you make a plan. Otherwise, you're going to be costing yourself more. But I do suggest that people like learn as much and inform themselves as much about the process and what is required for successful short-term rental design before they start.
Yeah, I can't underscore that enough. It's such an important part of hospitality,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah, and that's where like that's where the courses come in. Is I offer basically just a walk through hand holding of my entire design process for people who want to do it themselves, but just need the information on how.
Right. And if folks, wanted to work with you or wanted to connect with you, I know I mentioned at the beginning you have a Facebook group, so we'll drop a link to that. And you've got a website as well for your business.
Yep. My business is Hayes and Co. Interiors. And so yeah, my website is www.hayes-and-co.com.
Are you
And you
on
can,
social on Instagram or
I am, yep,
okay.
Instagram, Hayes and Company. And I am on Facebook. You can send me a message anywhere. I am always happy to chat with anybody at any time. I offer free 15-minute calls just to kind of talk through people's projects and help get them on the right track, because I think it's just really important to start off on the right foot. It makes for a lot more happier process.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I really am a believer in take action. Imperfect action is way more effective than non-action.
Mm.
So in kind of wrapping up today, what one action would you suggest that somebody could take today in terms of design to help them elevate their business?
I think it depends a little bit, I guess, on where you are in your journey, but I think that honestly, the easiest and fastest way to elevate your listing is the photography. I think there is almost always room for improvement in the photography, and it's a simple thing to learn if you're nearby, and you can do it with your phone, and you can get like those little detail shots that, like you said, are going to add to the anticipation. Just having like little pictures of like your coffee area or smaller pictures of your, just close in pictures of the like toiletries that you provide, or if there's just any special little thing, like really highlight that and give your guests something to look forward to that they can see in your listing. I think that's a really great place to start, and it doesn't take long and it doesn't cost hardly anything.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today, Paige. I suspect you'll be back at some point to talk
Yeah.
about some other things with me.
I would love that. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
Yeah.